The concept for Epartrade is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for Epartrade is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and to get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to epartrade.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At Epartrade, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of Epartrade. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
Epartrade really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Good morning from California, and welcome to Race Industry Now, the technical and business webinar series from Epartrade, presented to you by ARP and Performance Plus Global Logistics. I am Francisque Savinière, the founder and CEO of Epartrade, the global platform for the performance and racing industry. Today is episode 218, and we're going to be talking to Elgin Industries. With me this morning are Judy Kim, the co-founder of Epartrade, and a terrific host, Mr. Brad Gilly. Good morning, Judy.
Good morning. Good morning, Brad, Francisque, and everyone that's joined us. And today should be pretty exciting. How many companies could say they've been operating for over 100 years? I'm impressed with that alone, and manufactured in the USA. I'm impressed. So this is like an engine builder's dream come true with all that Elgin Industries offers, OEM and performance. So this is going to be an exciting one. I'm excited to hear Scott, what he has to say about Valvetrains. So, Mr. Brad?
Yeah, I'm excited too. This is going to be a lot of fun. I had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with Scott yesterday just talking about what we're going to have for the webinar today. And I think it's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be another one where not only are we going to learn, but we're also going to find out about some opportunities, how maybe we can actually improve what we're doing in the industry as well. So it's going to be a great time. So thank you very much, Francis. Thank you very much, Judy. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. And joining us here as our panelist is Scott Steyer, Aftermarket Sales with Elgin Industries. And again, we are talking about Valvetrain technology, Valvetrain info from the tech line of an OE supplier. And Scott, welcome. Really happy you're here today. And it's going to be a lot of fun talking about the LS engine.
Brad, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. We've enjoyed the Epartrade platform for well over a year now. It seems like the last every month is a year, it seems, since everything started, but I've enjoyed exploring the Epartrade website and then having that platform to showcase a lot of our product that people might not otherwise be aware of, including stuff beyond what we're talking about today, the LS engine. But you'll find a whole bantering of our catalogs on our website that are uploaded in fresh, most of them as of 2022. And yeah, we've had a good time working with something outside of a non-traditional trade show, joining the 21st century and attending all sorts of new venues. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh yeah, hey, it's wonderful, and it's wonderful that we found a great and in a lot of cases really a better way to do this and be able to connect with a lot of people at one time. We're going to have a presentation here. We're going to talk about a lot of the things that's going on with Elgin Industries, but we also definitely want your interaction as well. As we're going through the webinar here today, you are always more than welcome to ask a question. You can type it into the chat, and we'll try and address as many of them as we can. But Scott, I know you wanted to start here today with a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation, so I'll let you go ahead and do that, and then we'll just continue on with the conversation about what our topic is here today. How about that?
That sounds great, Brad. I am ready. So let's go ahead and here. So again, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you again for having us today. Thank you, Francique, Judy, Zach, and Brad for hosting Elgin on the Epartrade platform. My name is Scott Steyer. I have been with Elgin for about 5 years, but I have been a parts guy for over 25 years, and I have been in over 40 years as a fourth generation in an automotive family. My great-grandfather started a trucking company in Chicago and hauled all of the construction equipment into what is now Midway Field. One of my grandfathers was very active with antique cars and special interest vehicles, and the other grandfather raced stock cars, including at Soldiers Field, which is now, has been up until now, home for the Chicago Bears. So stock cars, and we have, my family has accumulated a small collection of cars, and I have raced and restored several of them. In my family building, we have a smattering of all sorts of stuff. We have muscle cars, British sports cars, we have a midget, we have a quarter midget that I learned to race in, all parked next to concourse level horseless carriages that we have restored. A little bit of everything, and I'm actually interested in a wide variety of vehicles. Anything with wheels and engines I'm interested in. And I became connected to Elgin through word of mouth because Elgin was looking for someone that could field questions, both technical and simple, for their over 100 years of products of engine and chassis parts. And my official duties here are technically I'm inside sales and technical support, but I also handle the digital marketing and a few other, whatever they ask me to help out with. So Elgin is a tier 1 OE supplier, a fully integrated manufacturer, and a master distributor for OE Valvetrain. We are manufacturing engineers, not necessarily engine builders. The OE will design the engine, and then Elgin designs a part to meet their specifications. We also offer the same capabilities for the aftermarket and performance parts manufacturing. And this little collage here that we're looking at right now, most of these vehicles have Elgin in the engine. A few of them just have Elgin on the side through sponsorship. Our primary sponsors, these days we use a company called Contingency Connection for all of our sponsor needs. So that being said, Elgin has been owned and operated by the same family in the same town for over 100 years. 3 of our founders' grandchildren are here every day running the business. Their grandfather, Martin Skoke Sr., began working in the auto industry at the turn of the century, and by the early teens, he was managing a multi-brand dealer garage here in Elgin. After several years, he recognized the need for a higher quality parts to replace the OEs, and he rented a small shared shop, this one right here, which is still standing. It's a carriage house behind a church of all things, to develop a higher quality piston pin. That was his first thing, was figuring out how to centerless grind and how to heat treat piston pins in a way that could produce a product that was longer lasting and higher quality than that which was out there by the OEs. He figured it out, and by 1919 he started business in a rented factory space in downtown Elgin, and it immediately took off. It was a huge success. People started buying all over the place. We started introducing more part numbers, and it was very successful. And so by 1927, he had outgrown the rented space and had already been had broken ground and started manufacturing a new facility on the state highway, just barely on the west edge of town at the time. So it was filled with all of his own tooling. It was filled with all of his own manufacturing processes, and it was really taking off. So we started making parts for all different types of engines and manufacturers, including one of our railroad customers, still to this day, was started in the Civil War. We're over 100 years old. They're approaching getting close to 175. So kind of fun stuff. That's why I included this poster in this presentation here. Here we're looking at a dated picture. This is a heat treat that was started and moved to the new facility, the new 1927 facility. And this was already an outdated picture when we took this during World War II. We had already developed some new processes for heat treat because we were very innovative over all the years. And the new factory was built as an efficient assembly line, and it was always kept up to be more or less state of the art, and the same continues through today. As technology progressed and new equipment developed, we had expanded beyond this space that you're looking at right now, and then the rest of the factory, of course, was racked up in logical order. So all of our machinery the assembly lines were made logical sense all the way through the product manufacturing to the end. Packaging and distribution. The original factory was sandwiched between two rail lines. So we had raw material both coming in and finished product shipping out, both by truck and rail, which is when we really kind of became the fully integrated factory that we pride ourselves on being today. So 1927, as I mentioned, was the year that we opened our first purpose-built factory, and it was also the year that we started a professional racing campaign. We started racing in the Indy 500 in 1927, and we continued up through 1954, racing a variety of platforms, including some Miller cars. We raced some Maseratis. We took the pole position in, I think, 41. Yes, 1941. I have it here. I'll show you later, maybe. We made a model of it. And then we had some spark issues, electrical issues that year, and so we only took fourth. And then after the war, we hooked up with Andy Granatelli. We ran a couple of the Curtis, Offie-powered Curtises, the Roadsters, up until 1954. And Martin Sr. loved the racing. He was very passionate about racing. It was beyond just the Indy cars. We raced some stock cars. We raced in the Pan America, the Carrera Pan Americana. We took first in our class, but we had some factory experimental equipment on it, so we got disqualified at the end, even though we won the time. Even though it was going to become a production part, it wasn't officially a production part yet. In this time, the early 50s, Martin Sr., pictured here and a few others, was starting to hand the reins over to Martin Jr., the second generation. And Martin kind of started to steer away from racing, and he focused on the future and polishing the company's portfolio into the tier 1 OE supplier that we are today. By the early 80s, we had broken ground on what is now the next edge of town on a brand new, fully new clean slate facility. It's now up to 150,000 square feet, and we supply to most of the OEs. You can see a few names there of our customers. And we have continued to focus on our core capabilities, plus do component processing such as camshaft heat treat. We are the largest fully integrated pushrod manufacturer in the world, and the largest fully integrated stamped rocker manufacturer in this half of the world. So we make a lot of pushrods. We make about 500,000 pushrods a week. And we offer that same OE technology that we make, that we're offering to the pushrods for the OEs. We're offering that exact same part to the aftermarket. Not necessarily direct. We do have a network, a 100-plus-year-old network of regional warehouses and distributors, not just in the U.S. or in North America, but around the world. Any place that the Western domestic engine platforms have been shipped to, we are still supporting products in those regions. A little bit about quality. As a tier 1, we of course have all the IATFs and the ISOs, the quality environmental. Q1 is Ford. That one is different, and it's interesting. It's a good one. And then of course, CQI 9 and 15, which are heat treat and welding for those that are interested in that stuff. In our building right now, we have about 150 years of combined experience on staff at a tier 1 level. And we also have teams of engineers, including metallurgists. So your typical shop can usually check Rockwell hardness with a file or with a tester or something like that. But in our lab, what we need to do for the OEs is we take a parse, we encase it in carbonite like Han Solo. We slice it like pastrami with a laser, etch it with acid, and then study it under an electron microscope to make sure that the heat treat has achieved the specific case depth. And then we can sample the hardness beyond nanomicrons with a diamond tip tester. And that's on all outbound products. Certain OEs will specify exactly, how many per batch we need to do, but we do it on everything. That's something across the board on a quality standpoint that we do. And we also check the inbound steel. So not only do we have a lab for checking outbound, but on inbound too, which scanning bars of steel that are 40 plus feet long and trying to return them after they come off the trailer with the crane is a little bit difficult. So what we do is we have an XRF, that's an X-ray fluorescent gun. It kind of looks like a radar gun that a police officer would have. It has an output, an LCD screen on the back of it. And it scans, you point it at something and you scan it. But in this case, we're pointing it at a bar of steel. And it scans the valence electrons and noble gases, and it gives us an output of all of the alloys that are in that steel. So what does that mean? That means that there's a signature in the steel of exactly what those alloys are, and the OEs have specified this is what we need our raw material to be made out of. This is what we want. This is the conditions that we want the finished product made out of. We follow suit to that, and we make sure that everything that is coming into the building meets those specifications. So not only do we just scan the ends of the bars, but we walk the deck of the length of the trailer and scan spots of it to make sure it's consistent across the board. So some of those quality signatures is what we can find out to make sure that a part that gets returned is our part, because it might not have a part number on it, but it definitely has a signature of everything that's in it. And that's something that almost no one can check out there in the engine building world, unless you're a big production engineering manufacturer or an OE tier 1 like us. These are the required processes that we have to manufacture to keep the parts the highest quality possible. And Elgin adheres to those highest standards and apply them both to, as again, I said, both to the original equipment parts and to the aftermarket performance parts. We even have our own internal auditing team as part of our quality department, which is a major investment, but it is key to high quality control. And because of that, because of all of those standards, Elgin is regularly recognized by our customers. So what does all that mean? That means, of course, we have a warranty. There's a warranty on all of our parts. We have to have a warranty because your new car is under a warranty. But the same goes for aftermarket parts too, is that you don't need to worry about it. When you buy a part from Elgin, it's going to have the exact same OE quality. It's going to meet or exceed OE standards, I guess is the best way to put it. When we say OE equivalent, it meets or exceeds OE standards, their specifications. So you don't have to worry about it, I guess. And all these folks, they like it too. So those are some of our awards. Real quick, our core competencies. Again, we are a fully integrated factory. So we have captive processes that not a lot of other people can have under one roof. Not only do we do the machining, but the heat treat and the advanced machines, which is and then the laboratory and everything else. So our extensive heat treat, because that's one of our proprietary, our founding core competencies that goes all the way back over 100 years. We do case hardening, neutral hardening, annealing, tempering, cryogenic. That's the freezing, the cryo stuff like Dr. Evil. And then of course the traditional, the regular heat treats, the carburizing, carbonitriding, and induction. High quality means high assurance. And what it really means is that my phone doesn't ring for material failures. My phone usually rings for information from that the people are trying to get from a competent OE manufacturer. When the phone does ring, the failure calls are usually something that has to do with interference and tolerance related. For instance, a guy puts a big cam in his traditional flat tappet engine, and he calls up and he says that his rocker studs are breaking. Well, I usually ask him, well, did you remember to put long slot rockers on there? Or are you still using stock? Oh, I used the stock ones. I didn't know if I had to use long slot, because there's so many people these days that are trying to buy stuff online and build it themselves rather than talking to a machine shop, which is what I always recommend is there might be a few more things that you need to do beyond what I know how to do, because I'm not an engine builder, though I did work in a machine shop and I understand the questions you're asking. There might be more stuff that you need to know about your build. The one key thing that I do like to tell people across the board, no matter who it is, but especially with flat tappet engines, is oil. And that's something that I can't be emphasized enough for older engines, especially the flat tappets. or any engine whatsoever. To quote Lake Speed Jr., you need to have the right oil in the right place at the right time in the right amount, and that's something that I preach regularly. I'm very passionate about antique cars and all cars in general, and I really like to educate people that were not aware of the oil changes, of the need for zinc, ZDDP, to be in the oil. Is one of the things that I regularly like to share with as many people as possible, because there's so many people that are out there that are not aware of it, that would normally benefit from any of the knowledge that I can share. I'm glad to do through my tech line. So I suppose that is it for the PowerPoint.
Well, that is awesome. What a great history lesson, first of all, of Elgin Industries. And anytime you can throw in Star Wars references and Austin Powers references and Lake Speed Jr., who we're a big fan of here at Epartrade, had a great webinar last week with Jeff Hammond hosting that as well. That's fantastic. And it really is amazing, the whole history of the company and everything that you've done and the awards recognitions. And I love where you had talked about, the way you test the heat treating as opposed to just a file. There's way more that goes into that, definitely from a technical standpoint. Now, you mentioned you answer the phones and the tech line there at Elgin. So, let's talk about the LS engine more specifically here and maybe some of the common questions that you get, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. The LS engine, it started in 1997. Which means the first ones are now officially an antique. It's kind of hard to believe that something that we're considering to be cutting edge and modern technology is already 25 years old. And I do get a lot of questions about it from engine builders, from end users, mostly from folks that are still kind of just trying to learn and trying to feel out the entire the platform as to whether it's viable. Of course, we know from our experience and from a lot of different racing teams and stuff like that, that it has been the king and will remain king, at least through the Gen 5 that we're looking at now. Gens 3, 4, and 5 have all been excellent. Of course, we're looking at 6, which is a totally different bird altogether. But because we are an OE and because we are upfront and one of the premier technologies, we do work closely with the OEs to find out a lot of information that I like to give back to people that are asking questions. Feedback that we not just get from the OEs, but also from production engine remanufacturers, the people that are out there that have big warranties on engines that are rebuilt, that are out there in the field working. And that kind of feedback is what we can translate back into performance and racing. Most of the questions that we get are about camshafts, choosing the right one for their application, or choosing the right mating components. A few questions that we get about the cams are related to the AFM, the active fuel management engines. Those are now starting to become a dated technology too. So a lot of the people that are looking to either keep or get away from, or just looking for more information on whether or not they should have that technology is a good question. But across the board, the LS engine, we get far less failures than traditional flat tappet cams. The lifters, the guides, the entire system of the Valvetrain, GM starting from a fresh slate for the Gen 3 has just proven to be such a successful winner. They have reliability and cost issues that are met with being a traditional push rod engine. It's compact. It's very easy to maintain. To kind of look at it, we make a lot of push rods for Ford, of course. And now we're happy to see that they're returning a couple of their platforms back to a push rod design too, because it is very efficient. So we do get a few questions about the stock stuff, but mostly it is about the performance. Most of the questions that I get are guys that are trying to build something and they want advice. And again, I know a little bit about LS. I am budgeting and collecting parts to do an LS swap, an LS build myself. And like a lot of people, it's a matter of choosing the right one and trying to guide people. There's no one right answer. And I definitely don't try to give people a right answer. What I do try to get them is to give them at least a way to find the answers, to not necessarily give them the answer, but to direct them to where they can find the correct answer. And what that translates into is that when we get questions about how to build an LS engine, how to put a performance engine together, it's all application based, because my favorite line that I came up with and that I use almost daily now is that a 4-door 4x4 on 44s tires, a truck, is going to need a totally different setup than an 1,800-pound drag car, which is the truth. You put the same cam in both of those vehicles, it's going to need it, depending on the tire size, the rear axle ratio, and the vehicle weight is going to tell you all sorts of things that you're going to need to know about. Stall speed for the torque converter, the flows for everything, a lot of different stuff that is beyond the scope of what we do. You know, here at Elgin, we are manufacturing engineers. Typically, the questions that we're used to answering are more about how do we make it, what do we make it out of, what materials are compatible with it, not necessarily what parts are compatible with it, or how to build an engine. So what I always recommend, what I like to recommend, and one of the premier prominent LS swap gurus recommends to find a build that's within both your budget and your expectation and copy it. Because today we are in the age of information. There's so much stuff out there. I mean, just look at Epartrade itself. You can go there and you can find anything you need for any of the platforms that you're looking for. You search camshaft, you're going to find cams. You search chassis, you're going to find chassis. Just start doing your research up front and find out as many parts that are out there that are available and which ones are going to meet your needs and meet your budget. And chances are, if you really start looking to a place such as other places, forums, Facebook groups, other forms of social media, is that there's someone out there that has already built exactly the combination you're looking for, whether it's a Chevelle with a blower or it's a mud truck. Chances are there's already someone out there that has built that. So I always say people like to share. This isn't 20 years ago. This isn't when I worked in a machine shop 20 years ago. 8 seconds and a quarter mile meant $100,000. 40 of it was in the engine, 40 of it in the chassis, and the other 20 of it in the tow rig and the secrets to find out how to get it done. Today, there's guys out there with our cam that are that we're going back a couple of years now. It's already 2 years old, but Matt Happel and the Sloppy Mechanics took our camshaft, the Sloppy Stage 2, the E1840P, put it in a Fox platform Mustang in a 4.8 liter LS engine and ran in 8 seconds in the quarter mile for less than $8,000. And it passed an NHRA tech lane, which is key. That means it had to have a chute because it was going, speeds upward of expecting to be 150. It had to have a full cage. Everything had to pass a tech lane so that when they can consistently, when they were approaching 8s, that they would be able to get into the 8s and not get kicked off the track, which is what a lot of times what happens when guys put a big cam in a light car. And we like that. We have a lot to thank for Mr. Happel and the rest of the Sloppy Mechanics crew. And a lot more questions. All that does is mean more questions for me and more questions that I hope that I'm going to be able to answer today for those folks that have questions. So
yeah. No, and I like this, and I love the fact too. I mean, the LS platform is just incredible, and you talked about all the great things about it, but also you talked about the fact that what applies here may not apply there, and just because something is really cool on this platform doesn't mean it's going to work on that platform, and that totally makes a lot of sense, and especially when we're talking about this. Let's talk about some terminology as well here, Scott. AFM and DFM. Can you explain the terms for people who might not be familiar with them?
Yeah, active fuel management. So Gen 3, the first LS engine, that came out, and that's a traditional small block. That's 8 cylinders firing all the time. Everything is going all the time, more or less. GM, right around 07-ish, when they were working on the Gen 4, they introduced a few new things. Active fuel management, which is kind of a displacement on demand. And then that ties in, of course, with variable valve timing too, which is something totally different. But the AFM itself is the lifter. Here's your traditional lifter. This is a Elgin part number 2148, HL 2148. This is what most people call an LS7 lifter. This was introduced in the Vortec era of the GM. I guess you could call it a Gen 2. But this is a traditional LS roller lifter. This is the same one used today in the LS engines in the Gen 5, and the same one, of course, is also used in Harley Davidson, same lifter. But it's, plunger, roller, nothing too exciting. Here's an AFM lifter, has a big spring on the end of it. The spring is controlled by oil. The spring is part of a mechanism that is controlled by oil. Instead of having one feed port, it has two. One of these feed ports, when the engine doesn't have much of a load on it, in order to gain additional fuel mileage, half of the lifters in the engine, half of the cylinders in the engine are turned off. So you go from an 8-cylinder to a 4-cylinder. So you're going to get much better fuel mileage when you don't need all 8 cylinders going down the road. So the lifter collapses. It turns off. The valves are no longer opening. The camshaft is still telling the lifter is still riding on the cam, but the cam isn't activating the valves anymore. So what that means is that you get better fuel mileage, and it turns out to be an advantage for everyone. So sorry, this one is I went back to the factory, and I gathered these this morning. So this one is leaking oil, which is a little bit distracting there. I apologize, but so AFM, half of the cylinders turn off. DFM Gen 5 Ecotech 3 direct injection engines, the newest ones within the last few years, all 16 lifters have this spring on them. And instead of firing on 4 cylinders, it changes the load. I've read a couple of different places, either 125 times a millisecond, which doesn't make sense, or 80 times per second. That I would believe, unless the technology has progressed that much in the last 18 months, because that was the span of the articles. But it calculates the firing order, 17 different firing orders depending on the load of the engine. So what does that mean? That means when you have really no load on the engine, you're going down a hill, your engine can be firing on 1 cylinder. And it's not just like firing on the number 3 cylinder all the time. It's going to be moving around within the engine itself. And that technology is fascinating. And that's cutting edge. That's with gas prices, I don't know, it could be a good thing. So
yeah, it could be a great thing. That's incredible, though, the technology involved in something like that, and all about. Look, anytime if we can save gas but still have power when we need it, that's a really good and incredible thing. Let's talk about high mileage. Let's talk about longevity when it comes to a lot of this, and the durability of that, if you will, Scott.
Well, mechanically, there's very few issues that can go wrong with this. The biggest issues are actually electrical, because this is there. You can, of course, I guess I should back up. On the mechanical side, of course, if you never change the oil in the vehicle, you're going to get sludge, and sludge is going to be a problem no matter what. You're going to have sludge that's going to get into places that it's going to not be able to get out of, such as the inside of this lifter. The tolerances inside this lifter have been said to be finer than the microns on your oil filter. So if you get grit in your engine, it's going to find its way in here and it's going to screw all sorts of stuff up, including the VLOM, the valve lifter oil manifold that's in between the intake manifold that controls this. If you get sludge in there, also you could have a failure. But we're not seeing as many failures with sludge as we are with electrical. The biggest issues that we're seeing are from the rust belt, from higher mileage, higher valued vehicles, such as like an Escalade or a Denali that may have been driven daily for the past 15 years and is starting to rust and corrode. And that corrosion is getting into the computers, the body control, the ECM and the PCM, and it'll start sending a ground fault interrupt. So basically what that means is there's a split-second ground somewhere within your vehicle's electrical system, and that ground is telling this lifter to turn on or off at the wrong point in the Valvetrain cycle. And what that does is this is a fuse. This is a mechanical fuse for an electrical issue. And if it tells itself to turn on during the wrong cycle, it will crush this spring. This spring up here will crush, and it will remain crushed. There's a locking mechanism in here inside the lifter body that two pins will snap out. They only do it once. Once it snaps, the fuse is blown and it needs to be replaced. And a lot of times they'll have that issue, the engine will fail. The engine won't necessarily fail. I should take that back. When this spring collapses, it prevents the valves from touching the pistons, which would be catastrophic failure for the entire engine. So this fuse pops, and then the engine stops more or less, because it's only running on, call it 4 cylinders. It might be 1, it might be all of them. It could be, but when that stops, when that does compress, when that does stop, then people will just replace the lifter and then they'll drive it a couple, maybe 100 miles, maybe 1,000 miles, and it'll happen again, and then they'll blame the part. Well, it's not the part. The part is a mechanical fuse for an electrical issue. To find that electrical issue can be very costly because it's very time consuming. To try to find a ground, where are you losing this ground in the computer? You could throw thousands of dollars at computers and still not find it because it could be somewhere in the harness. So a lot of people are deleting these. They're going with AFM delete kits, which is of course the thing that everyone does on the performance side. If you buy a Gen 4 engine and you're going to put it in a performance vehicle, you're going to delete this. You don't want this. You want all 8 cylinders all the time, which is when people usually switch to a good LS7 lifter. And that's what this is. This is their traditional LS7 lifter. So yeah, high mileage, we don't know yet, especially with the newest ones that have all 16 cylinders. Or all 16 lifters all have that spring on them. We don't know what the future holds for that yet. We're just finding out now what the Gen 4s are starting to react to.
Wow. I've seen quite a few people do LS rebuilds and effectively delete those just for that very reason that you just mentioned when you go watch any numerous amount of YouTube videos and everything like that. Do the issues also affect standard non-AFM DFM lifters?
No. Yes and no. The sludge is always going to be an issue. You of course you want to make sure that that you clean the engine completely. It's not a bad idea to replace the lifters. One thing that is shared between both the deactivation lifter and the standard lifter is this. This is a lifter guide. This is what keeps your roller lifter square on the camshaft. Is all 4 of your lifters, 2 pairs, 2 bores are going to be in here, and it's going to keep it square. This, if you can hear that, this is plastic. That's all that this is. This is not metal. This is plastic that's holding your lifters square. In the parking lot is a 250,000-mile Tahoe that I drive 70 miles a day, and I'm amazed that this has held the lifters square for 250,000 miles. Because it's plastic and it will fatigue, and we have found that to fatigue. This is the biggest problem with across the board, whether it's AFM or non-AFM, is that these plastic guides will fatigue over time, and when it fatigues, it's not just going to break. The lifter will turn sideways in the bore, and now you have a roller lifter riding sideways on a round cam, and that's going to last. Well, if you're at 7,000 RPM, it could be a millisecond before you wipe the cam. If it's in a like a towing vehicle, which is a lot of times what we see it in, high mileage, cross-country construction or whatever they do, it'll eat it away, and you'll hear a noise for maybe a minute as it gets worse and worse and worse before it completely fails. So sometimes when you do have higher mileage on these lifters, on the whole Valvetrain, on a weak oil pump, a tired oil pump, I guess I should say, you might want to, a stock length push rod will be fine, but you might want to go with a slightly longer one, an 050 longer push rod. But that might be a different conversation altogether, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, good. If you have a question, by the way, you're more than welcome to type it into the chat and ask it, and we'll get to those. But this is really fascinating conversation. And when you bring out that guide, every time I see one of those, I always think it was part of the packaging that the lifters were shipped in. But, obviously it's not with that. But it does emphasize the importance of using high quality OE components, either in a stock or performance LS application. Are the rockers the only LE parts that are compatible with the performance LE build or LS build? Sorry.
No, there's a lot of stuff. Push rods in general. A good push rod will last for a very long time. It could even go through a rocker, such as this one here. The rods themselves, we of course make the stock push rod, which the stock length push rod will be fine. Bone stock push rods have hit 7,000 RPM with no deflection whatsoever. With a stock rocker, a stock bodied rocker, an OE bodied rocker is more than capable of handling pressures in excess of 300 pounds for the spring, and then the push rod can as well. But it's once you start switching from so this is your stock rocker, stock bodied rocker. This is a LS3 rocker. You can see that there's a slight offset in it. And then when you get really extensive, then you go to a roller tipped rocker. When you go to roller tip rockers, you can't use a stock push rod anymore because you need to run a guide plate. So we offer the same push rod, carbon nitride, hardened. Exact same push rod as what you're going to find in the LS1. Still, the slightly thicker wall because the GM specifies, I think it's like an 080 or something like that. Beyond that, once you go to the beyond a stock bodied rocker, and you go, you're intentionally going beyond 7,000 RPM on a regular basis, whether it be in a short track application or drag racing or something where you're going to be bouncing off the rev limiter constantly. Then we go with the one-piece thick wall push rod. This is the one that's used around the world. We sell these around the world. All the high-end builders are all using this one. There are builders out there that say, well, you can get away with, something, a lesser wall. This is like we call it a 110. It's 110, 106, somewhere there, with 210 radius turned ends. It's chrome moly. It's one piece. It's hardened. It's centerless ground. So it's not, this is one piece. And this will never self-destruct. This is the one that everyone is using. This is the one that we get the most feedback on. These look like they're the same length, but we offer these in 025 different lengths. So a 7400 is the most common for an LS. You can go up or down in 025 increments because there's all different applications out there. If you're going to deck the block or mill the heads, you're going to change the head gasket thickness. All those different things are going to require a different push rod length. And that's when you want to make sure that you have the highest quality one possible. And that's the one that we manufacture, distribute under a variety of different lengths and varieties for everyone to use. The other ones that we use that are stock head bolts, stock head bolts. It is torque to yield. It is bone stock. Springs. We do offer a variety of beehive springs in various pressures. Valve springs for performance applications. And then the cams themselves, which are ground to we cut these out of a 4-inch by 4-inch by 12-foot long stick of billet bar stock. It's the same thing that an OE cam is cut out of. It's the same base circle. Again, the stock push rod length will work on a stock on one of these cams. The most popular one, the one that Matt Haffel has made popular, the Sloppy Stage 2. This is a very popular cam. It's whether it's naturally aspirated turbo, supercharged, nitrous, this cam responds to everything. We thank him very kindly for making this very popular because he found out we're the ones that make it. And then the phone started to ring off the hook. And that's when I became involved with LS engines on the aftermarket side. But on the kind of a gray area as to aftermarket, GM Performance. GM Performance is technically aftermarket. It's not OE. All of the LSX grinds, the LSX 376, the 454, the 454R, those are all Elgin grinds too. So if you need them, the numbers are like E1250P, E1251, all the way up through 1260. That information is available free to download off of Epartrade. We have our LS catalog up there that includes all the specifications and the part numbers for these cams and what they're commonly known as. And that's what this is. And that's what we enjoy doing most is offering these OE equivalent grinds to the aftermarket, and you don't have to pay the same price as what it would come from in a GM Performance box, even though you're getting the same spec cam, the same material. They're all 3-bolt cams, typical LS1. If you want to put it in a single bolt engine block, you just got to use the newer timing set with the reluctor wheel up front, but it'll go in there. And we really enjoy these cams. And then one more. We haven't told a lot of people about this. The production engineering manufacturers have had them out in the field for a few years now. Gaskets. We answered the call. We had our as I said, by volume, the production engineering manufacturers, they use a lot of parts, and then there's warehouses out there that also use a lot of parts. And we've had calls from both that they weren't able to get gaskets, and we have access to gaskets, and so here they are. So this is an LS gasket set. We offer it in both the non-AFM and the AFM. There's 2 different top end kits, and then they share the same bottom end kit because the bottom end is the same on both ones with the oil pan. But if you're interested in any of this stuff, contact us through Epartrade, and we'll be glad to send you more information on it. But yes, we do have gaskets, not just for LS, but for a variety of other applications, older stuff, small block, big block, Chevy, Ford, that kind of stuff. So that might be about it for parts for LS parts, I suppose. There is other stuff, but did any questions come in, Brad? Is there anything I can answer about LS stuff?
I don't see any in the chat right now, but one thing that you said that it just, and I love the way you presented this, and I love the way you said this, where you were talking about the push rods, and that basically someone says, well, you can get by with. Look, I get maybe you don't always need to overbuild something, or you don't need to have too much in something, and people are on budgets. But to me, whenever you hear that phrase, well, you could probably get by with, it should always have like follow-up questions as to the why and all of that. But I like the way you describe it, that you don't need to get by with this. This is it. So that makes a lot of sense.
We make a lot of them. Like I said, 500,000 push rods a week. Thereabouts. It ranges between right under 5 to over 6. A lot of OE, of course. OEs eat up a lot of that, but aftermarket eats up a whole heck of a lot too. And that's my department. I'm not in the OE. I'm in the aftermarket sales, and I've got a lot of customers that are really proud that they are putting Elgin, that they're sourcing a lot of their Valvetrain from Elgin, and especially those push rods, because that's what we're most well known for. People will bring us something and they'll say, well, I really needed to do this, and we'll say, well, here's your options. It's in the catalog. We have all these different series of push rods, from ones that will for street reuse that will just do, all the way to the ones that the engine builders that are actually racing, that are racing on TV, that they don't need it to fail on TV. Those guys, they come to us. Not necessarily directly. A lot of that goes through a distributor because they have it on the shelf. We just crank out parts. Like I said, the OEs will bring us a part, they'll set it on the table, and they'll say, we need 1,000 a month, 1,000 a week, 1,000 a day, whatever it's got to be. They send us empty totes. We send them back at the end of the day full. That's largely how we keep our machines busy. So
I'm thoroughly impressed, Scott. At first of all, not just your knowledge of the parts and the compatibility, as you were talking about, but also the specific products that you guys offer at Elgin Industries. And there's a great reason why you're the one answering the tech line quite often as well. But as you said, the Elgin Industries page on Epartrade, I guess probably the best source to go, depending on where you're looking, if you need to go to a distributor or talk to you guys directly and all of that.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. The emails come straight through to a group of us that answer questions. So we might, depending on what the question is, a different person might respond, but our Epartrade contact, when you contact us through there, it goes to a special email address that we set up that includes a group of us here on the Elgin side, so that we can best answer your question, whether it be a manufacturing question, engineering, or distribution, which would be me. Sales. Glad to sell anything I can. So
well,
and thank you for having us in May with our indie stuff. I went ahead and I switched out some of my pictures. I went down to our Hall of Fame down on the executive side, and I stole some of these pictures. This one right here is a panorama that, as of a few years ago, Indy would love to have a copy of, but it's sealed into the glass. They tried taking it out. The museum came here and tried taking it out to scan it, and they can't get it out. So they scanned it through the glass, and they were not able to get a good picture of it. But that's a panorama from our first Indy of 1927. This is us when we took pole position first. Well, when we were number one at the pole in 1941. And then the finned car, the one that had the fin on it, in like the mid 30s, we raced that one year. It was a terrible failure. It was very slow because that wing slowed it down. But and then a few other ones up there. But I switched them out because Francine noticed that I had our first Indy car in 1927 and our last one in 1954. I had them up in my office in here. So I had to grab a few.
I wouldn't give those back. I would not give those back. Just keep them.
Oh, it's very hard. Yeah. I asked for some and they said, well, we still have, some of us still go to Indy once in a while. And I stopped at the museum and I had them print off the first and the last one for myself because they had them on hand there so that I could have some in my office too. But yeah, some of the ones that we have, they're not out there. They're still in the family. Like I said, we're in third generation. So they still have a lot of the original pictures. So I wish we still had the car.
Yeah. Well, you had such a product range to talk about. We want to make sure you're included in Race Industry Week at the end of the year.
We'll
Okay.
invite you back. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we'd be glad to.
th-
Yeah, I
th-
mean, we can do that. Yeah, I'd love to. Please let me know whatever we got to do. I would love to. I would be honored.
th-
I enjoy watching these. I've watched several of these. I mean, I watch them when I can. I put them on in the background. It's interesting, you know, all the different options that you have out there to get information. And I like Epartrade because you guys are very global oriented and there's lots of different topics. You know, it's not just parts, because I'm not an engineer, and when the part stuff goes by, I don't understand it. But hearing first-hand accounts from people that are involved, I like those stories. I thoroughly enjoy listening to that. I will admit the Linda Vaughn one really early on. I think that was in the first week or the very first one. I like listening to her because my father has met her a couple of times. We have a Hearst car. We have a Hearst Rambler Scrambler, and she was Miss Hearst. And so I don't know, there's a little bit of a connection there. So I really thoroughly enjoyed listening to that first one that Linda did. So
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope it was this platform. I thought it was. I hope it was.
She's been on both race industry weeks, and she comes over here to my computer to get on. And so it's been fun to have her on. She's just,
Oh, very cool.
she has stories, good stories.
Yes, and I love those stories. Yes. Such a great, well, we're still in the prime of the auto industry. A lot of people like to say that her era was the prime, but I think we're in it now. I really think that we're in the golden age of the automobile is right now. We're witnessing it. We're all involved. And thank you for including Elgin in this involvement. We really appreciate this opportunity to be part of this.
Well, thanks for being part of Epartrade, Scott.
Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much for your kind words, and we'll have you back. So this webinar has been recorded. It will be posted later on the Epartrade platform, our YouTube channel, and different social channels. Thank you very much for watching today. We will be back next Wednesday, and we're going to be talking shop tools with shop monkeys. So that's going to be very interesting. Thank you very much to be with us today, and let's go racing. Bye-bye.
Registering on Epartrade is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use Epartrade as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to Epartrade.